On September 14, 2020, in the city of Taizhou, Zhejiang Province, China, a disturbing incident occurred that left many people deeply unsettled. Wang Lili, an ordinary employee working at a bookstore in the city, had suddenly vanished without a trace. To understand the full story, we need to go back 3 days earlier. On September 10th, Lili had contacted her company and requested 3 days off, explaining that she had urgent family matters to attend to. However, by the morning of September 14th, when her leave period had ended, Lili failed to show up for work as expected. What made everyone even more worried was that she hadn't called or texted any of her supervisors or colleagues to explain her absence, something completely out of character for someone as careful and responsible as her. Zhang, a colleague who had developed a fairly close friendship with Lili during their time working together, tried reaching her by every means possible. She called multiple times but no one answered, and her text messages went completely unanswered. Worry and confusion began to build in Zhang's mind. Finally, after careful consideration, Zhang decided to report this unusual situation to company management, then went to Lili's apartment herself to check on her colleague and find out what was really going on. When Zhang arrived and stood before the door of Lili's apartment, she began knocking and calling out her friend's name repeatedly. However, the apartment remained eerily silent inside, with no sounds or signs of anyone being home. The prolonged silence made Zhang increasingly anxious, and a bad feeling kept creeping into her thoughts. Unable to just stand there waiting in worry any longer, Zhang decided to rush downstairs to find building management, explain the situation, and ask for their help. After completing the necessary verification procedures, the building manager brought a spare key and returned with Zhang to Lili's apartment. As the door slowly opened, the sight that greeted them left everyone present stunned with horror. In the middle of the living room, Lili lay motionless on the floor in an agonized position, white foam frothing from the corners of her mouth. Zhang felt like she had turned to stone at this heartbreaking scene, her legs trembling so badly she could barely stand. After a few seconds of shock, she managed to regain her composure and immediately called the police. As soon as they received the report, police quickly arrived at the scene. The investigation team began meticulously examining every corner of the apartment, not overlooking even the smallest detail. After a thorough inspection, they noticed that there were no signs of struggle or fighting inside the room, the furniture was still neatly arranged in place, and no valuables appeared to be missing or disturbed. These findings helped police completely rule out the possibility of a home invasion robbery. During the information gathering process, police contacted and took statements from Lili's relatives. According to what her family told them, Lili had just turned 34 years old that year. She lived a healthy lifestyle with no bad habits whatsoever. Moreover, her health had always been excellent, and she rarely got sick or needed to visit a hospital. What made everyone most heartbroken and confused was that just the day before, on September 13th, family members had spoken with her on the phone completely normally. Yet after just one short night, she was gone forever. Returning to the crime scene examination, investigators carefully checked the victim's entire body externally. The results showed that Lili had no wounds, bruises, or any signs of having been beaten or violently attacked. Therefore, police made a preliminary judgment that Lili might have died from some latent illness that suddenly manifested or from some other sudden cause that couldn't be immediately identified. What exactly had happened to this young, healthy woman inside her locked apartment? To accurately and scientifically determine the true cause of Lili's death, forensic doctors decided to conduct a comprehensive and meticulous autopsy. However, no one could have expected that this seemingly routine procedure would become the key that opened the door to a terrifying secret, revealing the truth about a cold-blooded murder that had been cleverly concealed. After collecting and carefully analyzing the residue remaining in Lili's stomach, the forensic doctors discovered that this young woman's death was not a random accident or illness as initially suspected. Inside Lili's stomach, forensics found a large amount of toxin at concentrations high enough to kill. This discovery completely changed the direction of the investigation, transforming it from an ordinary death case into a serious murder that needed to be solved. So where did that deadly toxin come from? Had Lili accidentally consumed or drunk this poison on her own? Or was this a deliberate act by someone who had planned to poison her? If it was the latter, who was that person and what was the motive behind such a cruel act? A team of police officers was dispatched to Lily's workplace to investigate and gather information. Through their inquiries, they learned that Lily was just an ordinary bookstore employee. Her daily work mainly involved receiving inventory, shipping orders, tracking sales figures, organizing bookshelves, and serving customers who came to buy books. All the colleagues who had worked with and interacted with her gave the same assessment. Lily was a gentle, soft-spoken, and rather quiet woman. Police also couldn't find any conflicts or friction between her and any co-workers. According to her colleagues, every day she arrived at work on time, completed her assigned tasks, and went home after her shift. That's precisely why, when she took leave and then failed to show up at work on schedule without contacting anyone, all her colleagues sensed that something abnormal was happening. After completing the investigation at the victim's workplace, police hit a dead end when they couldn't find any enemies or anyone with grudges against Lily and her social relationships. When the workplace investigation yielded no significant leads, police began shifting their focus to more intimate relationships in Lily's personal life. Another group of officers was sent to the rural area where Lily's parents lived to visit them and gather more information. Lily's parents were both simple, honest farmers from the countryside. When they met with police, they were still reeling from shock and grief over their daughter's sudden death. Through their tearful accounts, police learned that Lily had left home for the city to work many years ago, living away from home year-round. Although the geographical distance prevented them from meeting frequently, Lily had always been a filial daughter who regularly called to check on her parents' health. About 2 months before the tragic incident occurred, during a phone call home, Lily suddenly announced to her parents that she had officially registered her marriage. This news left her parents both happy and surprised. Normally, marriage is one of the most significant events in a person's life, and before getting married, a daughter should bring her boyfriend home to meet her parents so both families can meet, get acquainted, and learn about each other. However, over the phone, Lily had reassured her parents that they didn't need to worry at all. She explained that her husband was an extremely capable and trustworthy man who held a government civil servant position with stable employment. Because of the special nature of his work, he was constantly busy with his assigned duties and had very little free time. For this reason, the two of them had decided to register their marriage first to make the relationship legally official. As for visiting both sets of parents and discussing wedding arrangements, they would schedule that when work became less hectic. This explanation sounded reasonable enough to Lily's parents and family, so they didn't ask further questions. Moreover, with the simple thinking of this farming couple, the fact that their daughter, just an ordinary girl, had been lucky enough to find a husband who was a government civil servant with stable employment and respected social status was already extremely fortunate. As for this son-in-law, they had never even met once. Lily had only revealed a few basic pieces of information to her parents over the phone. She told them his surname was Dai, and he had previously been married once, but that marriage had ended in an amicable divorce. Beyond this scant information, Lily hadn't revealed any other details. What surprised police was that apparently Lily had only told her parents and family about the marriage because even her co-workers didn't know she had gotten married. This marriage not only seemed like a hasty wedding, but also appeared to have been kept very secretive. Immediately after obtaining this important lead about Lily's secret marriage, police quickly traced and verified her detailed information at the local marriage registration office. According to their search results, Lily's legal husband was named Dai Lumen, currently working at the Taizhou Natural Resources and Planning Bureau. Looking at his photo in the records, investigators saw that Lumen was a middle-aged man wearing glasses with an intellectual look about him, appearing cultured, polished, and trustworthy. However, there was something extremely strange. From when the case occurred until the present moment, there had been absolutely no sign of Lumen anywhere. He hadn't come to Lily's apartment to check on the situation, hadn't contacted his wife's family to ask about her, and hadn't gone to the police station to file a report or request updates on the case. The complete absence of the husband under these circumstances truly raised suspicions. Under normal circumstances, the couple had only been married for a mere 2 months, supposedly in the sweetest honeymoon phase of married life. This should have been a time when a couple's feelings are most passionate and close, when they should be together. Yet when investigators carefully examined the apartment where Lily lived, they noticed there were absolutely no signs that a man had been living there. Had the two of them only completed the marriage registration paperwork without actually living together? And what made police even more deeply suspicious was Lumen's attitude and behavior throughout this whole time. Lily, his newlywed wife, had died suddenly and mysteriously. Yet Lumen seemed completely unaware. He hadn't tried to contact her when she didn't answer her phone or respond to messages for several days. Such behavior and attitude from a newly married husband was truly abnormal and suspicious. Based on these suspicious points and Lumen's puzzling absence, police decided to officially make this mysterious husband their target of investigation. As for Dai Lumen, he continued his daily life normally as if nothing had happened. To avoid alerting the suspect and making him wary, police decided to conduct secret surveillance of all Lumen's activities and daily routines. Through their surveillance, investigators observed that Lumen was indeed a typical government civil servant. Every day he arrived at work exactly on time, checked in properly, and left exactly on time, not a minute off. During his 8 hours of work at the office, his job seemed quite leisurely and relaxed, mainly consisting of sitting around drinking tea, reading newspapers, and occasionally handling some paperwork that wasn't too complicated. However, outside those 8 hours at the office, Lumen's private life could only be described as extremely rich and varied. In his phone contacts were numerous women's numbers, and he was maintaining ambiguous, unclear relationships with many of them. The text messages back and forth, the frequent late-night phone calls, all showed that Lumen was simultaneously involved with multiple different women. To the outside world, Lumen always presented himself as a single man, completely hiding the fact that he was married. He frequently brought young women back to his residence without any hesitation, a different address, not Lily's apartment. Why had two people who were legally and officially married not been living together? Who between them had wanted to hide the truth about this marriage? And what was the purpose behind that concealment? While police were working day and night to continue their investigation, closely monitoring Lumen's every move and gathering more evidence, they unexpectedly received a phone call from a completely unexpected source. This call became the most important piece of the puzzle, finally providing a logical explanation for the mysterious case. Immediately after receiving this information, police didn't hesitate for another second and made the decision to arrest Dai Lumen for formal questioning. It turned out this call came from a local insurance company. They suspected that a family who had purchased their insurance product was involved in a wife murder insurance fraud scheme. And the suspected person was none other than Lumen. According to the insurance company's detailed account, around April 2020, about 5 months before the tragic incident, Lily had come to their company to purchase a life insurance policy for herself with an enormous coverage amount of 2 million yuan, approximately 2 million yuan, 280,000 US dollars. At the time the contract was originally signed, the beneficiary Lily designated was her own father. However, not long afterward, Lily had proactively contacted the insurance company to request a change to an important clause in the contract. She informed the insurance agent that she had just gotten married, and for that reason, she wanted to change the beneficiary from her father to her newly married husband, Dai Lumen. In the insurance industry, changing beneficiaries after marriage is a completely normal and common request. Therefore, the insurance agent didn't suspect anything and processed the beneficiary change from Lily's father to her husband Dai Lumen, according to standard procedures. What the insurance company never expected was that just a short time later, Lumen proactively contacted them. Over the phone, he announced in a strangely calm voice that his wife had just died due to an unexpected accident, so he wanted to ask about the procedures and requirements for receiving the insurance payout. Lumen's eagerness and somewhat rushed attitude in claiming the insurance money made the company employees feel something wasn't right. Even more notably, immediately after ending his phone call with customer service, Lumen rushed straight to the insurance company office and filled out a personal accident claim form. As soon as they received the written claim from Lumen, the insurance company quickly initiated their investigation and verification process according to internal regulations. and the claims investigators immediately spotted multiple red flags. First, this insurance policy had only been purchased less than 90 days ago, yet the insured person had already died in an accident. This was an extremely short time frame, suspiciously short. To illustrate just how new this policy was, if Lumen hadn't rushed to the insurance company to file a claim, the policy Lily had purchased wouldn't have even reached its third premium payment yet. The second red flag related to the mismatch between the policy's value and the purchaser's financial means. Lily was just an ordinary bookstore employee with a modest salary, whose daily work consisted of organizing books and serving customers. Yet this was the first time in her life she had purchased commercial insurance for herself, and right from that first time, she had chosen a life insurance policy with coverage of 2 million yuan, approximately 280,000 US dollars. This was clearly too large and unreasonable a discrepancy compared to a bookstore employee's monthly income. With their years of experience in the industry and professional instincts, the insurance claims investigators quickly connected this to similar murder for insurance fraud cases. Recognizing the seriousness of the situation and not wanting a potential crime to escape legal punishment, the insurance company decided to report to police immediately. They handed over all files and detailed documents related to Lily's insurance policy to law enforcement, including the history of beneficiary changes and the claim form Lumen had just submitted. Immediately after receiving these invaluable documents from the insurance company, police felt like they had been handed the final piece of the puzzle. They didn't hesitate another second before making the decision to arrest Dai Lumen for formal questioning, and very soon after, the cultured, civilized mask this government civil servant had been wearing was stripped away to reveal the truth. During the first interrogation sessions at the police station, Lumen tried to remain calm and vigorously denied all accusations. He played the role of a grieving husband, insisting that he was completely innocent and felt devastated, heartbroken over his wife's sudden death. He even confidently declared that he could provide solid alibis to prove he wasn't at the scene when Lily died. However, when investigators slowly placed on the table the 2 million yuan insurance policy with Lumen himself named as beneficiary, along with a series of undeniable evidence that he was maintaining romantic relationships with multiple women while still being Lily's legal husband, Lumen's expression began to change. With no way out, unable to continue fabricating more perfect stories to cover up his crimes, Lumen finally confessed everything to police. What Lumen revealed in the interrogation room shocked even the most experienced investigators who had handled countless serious cases. The methods he used to commit his crime were absolutely not something an ordinary person would think of or dare to execute. Looking back at the entire plan, people realized that the marriage with Lily was just one small step in the cruel scheme Lumen had planned in advance. The ruthlessness and cold-bloodedness in how he planned and executed his crime truly made anyone who heard about it shudder with fear. To understand the motive behind this cruel crime, we need to go back in time to learn about the life and true character of Dai Lumen before he became a cold-blooded murderer. Lumen was a government civil servant with stable employment. With this position, he already had a fairly good income. Moreover, with his cultured and polished appearance, Lumen was a man highly sought after by women in the area. Many women were attracted by the trustworthy appearance of a government civil servant, combined with the courteous, gallant manner he always displayed. Surrounded and admired by many women, Lumen gradually became intoxicated with this lifestyle and didn't want to give it up. He began juggling multiple women simultaneously, enjoying the feeling of being pursued and desired from many directions. The admiration and praise these women gave him made Lumen extremely pleased and self-satisfied. To maintain his image as a successful, generous man worthy of that admiration, he began spending money extravagantly without control. Lavish dinners at upscale restaurants, expensive gifts for his mistresses, luxurious trips, all required substantial financial resources. However, after a period of living in such luxury, financial problems began to surface seriously. His salary couldn't keep up with his increasingly lavish spending habits. Facing an increasingly severe money shortage, he decided to try financial investing, hoping to quickly make a large sum to continue maintaining his extravagant lifestyle. With this get-rich-quick mentality, Lumen blindly plunged into the financial markets with no knowledge. He not only poured money into stocks, but also invested heavily in the highly risky and volatile cryptocurrency market. However, having absolutely no experience in investing and no knowledgeable person to guide or advise him, he continuously made wrong decisions. As a result, the capital he invested quickly evaporated into thin air. By the time he realized the problem, he was already carrying a massive debt of 2.6 million yuan, approximately 365,000 US dollars. With this crushing debt, Lumen's life pressure reached suffocating levels. Creditors began constantly calling to demand payment, threatening and pressuring him relentlessly. He was forced to rack his brain, trying every possible way to get money to fill the enormous financial hole he had created. And after considering all options, Lumen concluded that the fastest, most effective way he could get money with his advantages was insurance fraud. And his cruel plan began to take shape from there. However, to execute this insurance fraud scheme, Lumen realized there was one mandatory prerequisite that couldn't be avoided. He himself had to be the beneficiary of the insurance policy to legally receive the payout. This was an essential condition with no workaround. The problem was, in normal life, no one would name a complete stranger as their insurance beneficiary. That would be completely illogical and would immediately raise suspicions. This direct approach definitely wouldn't work. After carefully considering every possible option, Lumen concluded that the only feasible method to achieve his goal was through legal marriage. He would have to find a suitable woman, go through official marriage procedures according to the law to become legal spouses. After having the legal status of husband, he would convince his wife to buy life insurance and designate him as beneficiary, something completely normal that wouldn't raise suspicions. Then he would create what appeared to be an accidental death for his unfortunate wife. And finally, as the legal husband and designated beneficiary, he could legitimately go to the insurance company to collect the enormous payout. With his plan clearly mapped out in his mind, Lumen began searching for a suitable target among the women he knew. And the name he chose was Wang Lili, an unremarkable girl living a quiet, simple life. He and Lili hadn't had much interaction or close relationship before, but through their few contacts, he noticed that Lili seemed to have special feelings for him. Moreover, Lili's parents both lived in a remote rural area, not nearby to frequently check on or interfere with their daughter's life. Lili herself lived and worked alone in the city, with fairly simple and limited social relationships, mainly revolving around her job at the bookstore and her small apartment. She didn't have many close friends or relatives nearby who could notice and detect anything unusual. All these factors made Lili the perfect prey in the eyes of a cold-blooded predator like Lumen. After confirming Lili as his target, Lumen began approaching her, displaying all the charm and masculine appeal of a successful government civil servant, making Lili completely infatuated and placing absolute trust in this man. Taking advantage of her blind trust, Lumen smoothly proposed, and, unsurprisingly, Lili agreed immediately in overwhelming happiness. The two quickly went to the marriage registration office to complete the paperwork and officially become legal spouses. From the very beginning, Lumen had absolutely no intention of holding an actual wedding or performing any ceremonies. He always used work being too busy as an excuse to refuse, because a marriage not built on a foundation of genuine love could never produce a real married life. The marriage certificate they both signed was, in his eyes, nothing more than a necessary legal tool, a stepping stone for him to legitimize receiving insurance payouts later. For that reason, after completing the marriage registration paperwork, Lumen continued making every excuse, claiming he was busy with work, and since they hadn't had an official wedding yet, it wasn't convenient to live together. With his smooth-talking skills honed over years of conquering women, Lumen quickly moved to the next step in his dark plan. He began cleverly presenting seemingly reasonable and caring reasons to convince Lili to purchase a commercial insurance policy with an enormous sum. And Lili, lost in the intoxication of love, completely trusted everything her husband said and agreed without any doubt or hesitation. After completing the task of convincing Lili to buy insurance and designate him as beneficiary, Lumen turned to finding a way to kill his newlywed wife without leaving any traces or evidence. In his confession to police, Lumen admitted that he had considered many different methods to commit his crime. After thinking it over repeatedly and eliminating options that were too risky or easily detected, he concluded that the most efficient, safest, and hardest to detect method was still poisoning. The victim would die quietly without signs of violence or struggle. The crime scene would be clean with nothing suspicious, and if lucky, it could be considered death by illness or natural causes. However, a major problem arose: how to obtain poison. Heavy metals with high toxicity were all under strict government control, with sales being closely monitored and documented. Lumen wasn't a scientist or someone working in a laboratory, so he had no legitimate channel to access these poisons without raising suspicions. Therefore, Lumen began spending significant time researching and studying large amounts of materials, searching the internet for natural toxins and methods of causing death that would be hard to detect. After thorough research, he discovered an extremely dangerous toxin from nature, tetrodotoxin or puffer fish poison. What made Lumen even more interested in this option was that pufferfish was actually a famous delicacy on dining tables. Although poisonous when properly prepared by skilled chefs, pufferfish meat was considered a high-end specialty that many people were willing to pay to enjoy. For this reason, a death from pufferfish poisoning could easily be explained as an accident from eating improperly prepared fish. With this approach, Lumen believed he could commit murder without anyone suspecting, hiding his crime under the guise of an ordinary food poisoning incident. According to Lumen's detailed confession during interrogation, obtaining this deadly toxin required enormous effort, time, and careful calculation. His plan to purchase pufferfish toxin officially began in June 2020. To avoid detection and leave no traces that could be directly linked to himself, Lumen didn't purchase the toxin personally, but asked one of the many girlfriends he was involved with. Her surname was Gong. Lumen told Miss Gong that he needed to buy pufferfish toxin for scientific research and experiments. To ensure the purchase couldn't be traced back to him, Lumen gave Miss Gong a brand new blue Xiaomi phone along with a new SIM card. He gave her detailed instructions on how to communicate and required her to pose as a professor from Zhengzhou University purchasing chemicals for research. With this fake identity, Miss Gong contacted the seller Lumen had found beforehand and ordered 2 milligrams, about 0.00007 ounces, of pufferfish toxin in the first transaction. The first purchase went smoothly without any obstacles, so he continued directing Miss Gong to make additional purchases with increasing quantities. On August 18th, he bought another 5 milligrams, about 0.00018 ounces. Just 8 days later, on August 26th, he ordered another 10 milligrams, about 0.00035 ounces. And finally, on September 27th, he made the largest purchase of 20 milligrams, about 0.0007 ounces, of pufferfish toxin. All these deadly packages were sent to a Kainiao pickup station at some residential complex. After delivery, Miss Gong would pick them up and forward them to Lumen, without knowing she was unwittingly assisting a murder plot. After having sufficient pufferfish toxin in hand to commit his crime, Lumen faced the next important problem: how to get this deadly poison into Lily's body without making her suspicious or detecting anything unusual. After many days and nights of racking his brain and considering every option, Lumen finally decided to put the pufferfish toxin inside Pearl supplement capsules. He would play the role of a loving, caring husband, giving his wife these capsules as a gift for health and beauty care, pretending they were premium products he had specially purchased for Lily to improve her skin and appearance. As for Lily, when her husband gave her these beauty capsules, she felt lucky to have such a thoughtful husband who always cared about her health and appearance. And then the fateful day arrived. On September 13th, 2020, Lumen voluntarily came to Lily's apartment, and together they went to the kitchen to cook, chatting happily. That evening, Lumen didn't forget to remind Lily to call home to check on her parents, an action that seemed full of care and thoughtfulness from a good husband. However, behind that fake concern lay a dark and carefully calculated purpose. Throughout the call, Lumen cleverly arranged things so that Lily never mentioned that he was there with her. He himself also found every excuse to refuse speaking directly with her family, brushing it off casually. This also explained why, before the case was discovered, Lily's family had still been in normal contact with her without suspecting anything unusual. After the couple finished dinner, they sat together on the sofa watching TV. This should have been peaceful, happy moments for a young married couple. But for Lumen, this was the moment he had been waiting for. With an expression as calm as if nothing was happening, he slowly took out the pearl capsules that had been carefully prepared in advance. In a sweet, caring voice, he gave them to Lily and told her to take one, saying these were beauty supplements he had specially purchased for her. Lily didn't suspect anything and happily took the capsule from her beloved husband's hand. Not long after taking the first capsule, she began feeling that something wasn't right with her body. Nausea rose from her stomach, and she had to run to the bathroom to vomit. After a bout of discomfort, things seemed to return to normal, and she felt better. Witnessing this scene, Lumen felt some tension and worry. He wasn't sure whether one capsule would be enough to produce the result he wanted. But after thinking about it, he told himself that if he missed this opportunity, who knew when he would have such a convenient chance to execute his plan again? So he told Lily that perhaps she should take 2 more capsules for better beauty effects, and this time her body's reaction was much faster and more violent. In just moments, Lily's entire body began convulsing uncontrollably, tremors spreading from her limbs to her whole body. Her arms began flailing wildly in the air unconsciously. Standing before the sight of his wife writhing in pain and fear, Lumen showed not the slightest tension or panic. On the contrary, a sense of joy and relief rose within him, a terrifying feeling. His plan was going exactly as expected. Less than 5 minutes after taking those deadly capsules, Lily collapsed onto the living room floor, completely motionless and no longer breathing. Her face was terrifyingly distorted, contorted, and fierce, reflecting the extreme agony she had endured in her final moments of life. At this point, with his wife's freshly deceased body still lying there on the cold floor, Lumen showed not a shred of remorse or regret. Instead, he quickly cleaned up the crime scene, erasing all traces that could prove his presence at the apartment that night. He collected all the remaining capsules, direct evidence that could convict him, then quickly left the room. To ensure there were no gaps in his perfect plan, he also took Lily's phone and deleted all their WeChat messages. After completing the evidence destruction, he contacted and made plans with other girlfriends he was involved with, going out with them. The purpose of this action was to create multiple witnesses who could confirm he was somewhere else entirely when Lily died, strengthening his alibi for when police investigated later. It can be said that this despicable and cruel man, faced with the temptation of material gain and pressure from his enormous debts, was willing to do anything, crossing every boundary of human morality and ethics. He had become so inhumane it was terrifying, willing to kill an innocent woman. The most pitiful thing was that Lily, that gentle and naive girl, probably never realized the cruel truth even in her final moments of life. She couldn't understand that the real purpose behind this man approaching her was a murder for insurance scheme planned in advance. The love she thought she had was just an elaborately staged play, and she was the pitiful victim in that cruel tragedy. However, no matter how cunning and carefully calculated Lumen was, the evidence and clues he thought he had erased were eventually found by investigators. In 2022, after a lengthy process of investigation, evidence gathering, and trial, Lumen was officially brought before the court to face legal judgment. At the first trial, with undeniable evidence of the cruel crime he had committed, the court sentenced him to the highest penalty: death. Lumen appealed to the higher court hoping to reduce his sentence, but after carefully reviewing the entire case file, the appellate court decided to uphold the death sentence, affirming that this punishment was entirely deserved for the crime he had committed. In its verdict, the court clearly stated its position and reasoning in detail. The court determined that the defendant Lumen, as the designated beneficiary in the insurance contract, had conspired and intentionally caused the death of the insured person Wang Lili in order to fraudulently obtain the enormous insurance payout of 2 million yuan, approximately $280,000. His actions fully met all the elements constituting the crimes of intentional homicide and insurance fraud under the law. All charges brought by the prosecution were confirmed by the court as established and well-founded. The court also emphasized the aggravating circumstances that made the death penalty entirely necessary and deserved. The defendant Lumen had prepared and plotted his crime long before committing the act, showing this was not an impulsive action, but the result of a plan carefully calculated over a long period. His subjective malice was extremely deep, demonstrated by his willingness to kill his newlywed wife just for money without any conscience or hesitation. His motive for the crime was extremely base and despicable, stemming from bottomless greed and extreme selfishness, treating human life like worthless grass. The methods he used were extremely secretive and sophisticated, from having someone else purchase the toxin, to disguising the poison in beauty capsules, to creating alibis after the crime, all showing his cunning and dangerousness. This case also caused extremely negative social impact, shocking public opinion, and causing many people to lose faith in human relationships. Combining all these factors, the court concluded that Lumen's crime was extremely serious, and according to the law, he must receive the highest punishment. The final legal verdict was delivered, sentencing this cold-blooded criminal to death. At the Taizhou Intermediate People's Court in Zhejiang Province, Dai Lumen finally faced the most severe punishment and paid the ultimate price for the cruel crimes he had committed. Justice was finally served, though it could never bring Lily back or ease her family's pain. This verdict may give many people some comfort that justice was served, and the evildoer paid for his crimes. However, more than that sense of fairness, this tragic case serves as a painful reminder and profound lesson that makes us reflect on the dark side of human nature. Under the constant temptation of money and material gain, how fragile can the line between good and evil in the human soul become? What are your thoughts on this case? Please share in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.